Application modernization is a costly and complex endeavor for organizations that have investment in legacy or non-cloud-based platforms. We've developed a cloud-first strategy enriched with a preference of buying more complete services such as SaaS to deliver the business value, which is our ultimate goal. By leveraging our cloud-first strategy, we can holistically look at our applications and align our internal product roadmaps with vendor roadmaps to sequence the optimal time to modernize these platforms. There are multiple factors that play into sequencing, including delivering additional value to the organization through new feature sets and capabilities, and ensuring first that those feature sets are only available on a newer platform. Reducing the risk of running on older versions and ensuring that if we are due to upgrade, that the upgrade and modernization are combined. And understanding the journey of our vendors and when is the optimal time from a cost perspective to make the leap to cloud. By ensuring that the platform is mature enough and by moving there now versus later, that the cost profile is significantly better. One area that we've had to focus on is evolving how our team work with applications in the cloud. The days of each team having their own VM are gone, so we must focus on modernizing our DevSecOps to reduce our infrastructure footprint. As we modernize our applications, we have new operating models with vendors. It's imperative that we define and redefine how to engage with those vendors to get the most value. With true cloud-based offerings, you often lose some amount of configuration or customizations. So having a direct line to influence vendors' roadmaps or participating in client advisory groups becomes a very important part of your new operating model.
In MUFG also, we have Cloud Smart as our strategy. And as we embark on our native cloud migration, there are a few things that I would like to share with this group. Number one is we work very hard not having lift and shift because not everything built equal on-prem and can be equally moved on to the cloud. So as we are identifying different systems that we want to pivot into Microsoft Suite using their cloud technologies, namely their no-code platform, their Power Platform, Dataverse. As we moved into this area, we run into different problems such as organization silo, especially if we're working in a corporate environment. I think it's not uncommon for some of you having a team completely in US, which is just focused on firewall, and you might have another team somewhere, in Canada, focused on infrastructure, and they might not talk to each other. But as we are moving on to this journey, we recognize very quickly that this kind of silo caused a lot of issue. And the lesson learned here is, regardless how trivial you think it is, as you embark on this pivoting to new technology, make sure that all the team, all the players are brought to the table. And of course, I mentioned about Microsoft. The support from Microsoft as a vendor is super important. And we also ran into issue during our development where we run into issue on we really need their support. And because they deem it is not a production environment, their support methodology is somehow very different. So how we can engage our customer success manager represented Microsoft is super important.
We definitely have some pain. We're a managed services organization. So we have the challenges of, security and capacity and cost management. We manage 25,000 databases and 2,000 endpoints for 500 clients. And they cross all clouds, IaaS and PaaS. They cross into data centers, into edge, and all the way into sort of the telco edge. So we kind of see a very diverse deployment, and a good portion of the work we do is migrating from those on-premise to cloud, which we need to now have interesting sort of access and technology footprints across everything that you see, right? Even more difficult is we manage them as a single service. So now, predicting transaction volumes, predicting seasonality across 500 clients, almost impossible, right? So, looking at capacity and demand and performance is a, complex scientific algorithm we have to go through. And since there's no reasonable sort of multi-tenanted alerting and monitoring tool across those clouds and data centers and edge, In many ways, we had to build our own, right? We had to build our own Datadog technology that allows us to collect all that interesting, real-time operational info and bring it back and manage the incidents and the full sort of ITIL process back at home across multiple teams. Complex in its intellectual property to which we had to build because it simply didn't exist. We've had to build out our own multi-cloud capacity. We have databases around the world, so we can't just have, single geos, single regions, and single clouds. I have to have at least 6 geos in each of the 4 clouds, including OCI, and then I have to migrate and modernize data throughout all of those panes, which means my networking topology becomes complex, and I need to deploy that in something far more mature, like an AWS network world versus a GCP, as an example. So we have challenges.
Definitely not geo as what Paul identified, but I mean, for our organization, we're a strong brand, essentially a value-added reseller and servicing some large financial services organizations. And, like talking to the customers as well, I think one of the things that I'm seeing, which is a key underlying message, is the customer expectations for personalized experiences. So essentially, the strategy that I'm articulating or crafting is really, building around the customer-centric approach as well. So ushering really a paradigm shift into a customer experience being reimagined, I would say. So I would say, from a sustainable growth perspective, I would say I'll break the challenges into 2 categories. So business and IT. From a business perspective, what I've seen so far, data residency, compliance, justifying the business case for the capital expense as well. So CapEx and OpEx. Really, I would say, I think the one that I would add, which I've not seen as of yet here, is articulating a joint vision with the business, really on a simplified approach for cloud-first thought process, as Michelle identified as well. And from an IT perspective, there's been a little bit of a different lens that I've adapted to. So, we say that we need to address the technical debt. We need to, bring on the emerging tech that enables to meet business outcome as well. But we talked about the application modernization, the complex legacy customized apps, which are hard to replicate into the cloud as well. But security and privacy being top of mind, it becomes really, for us as an organization, has become table stakes because we're servicing large financial services organizations as well. Last but not least, I think the point that I wanted to reiterate is the double click on the technical debt that I've had to do, which is it's not just about the technology piece, but we're focusing on building a plan in place for architecture, design, process, and code debts to really build that digital transformation journey for our organization.
I'd start with, we find ourselves in what Google described to us as the very awkward hybrid environment. So we're very much in between on-premise data center environment with a mixture of large SaaS and a number of production workloads across 2 large hyperscalers in Azure and GCP. And so if I focus on those last pieces, the hyperscalers, to your question, the key areas for improving our maturity have included trying to select and pin our DevOps processes against a framework. And this allows things like an on-ramp for groups like internal audit to be able to help us assess our maturity and areas and gaps. And the lack of a globally accepted DevOps framework or industry standard in that area has proved challenging. For efficiency, we focused a lot on infrastructure orchestration and really looking to do infrastructure as code and trying to build environments against documented patterns that meet the speed of our development teams and what they require. And because we're really in that hybrid mode, it does stretch our teams across being able to meet what our internal clients want. And then finally, I'd say for cost and maturing in that area and understanding a total cost of ownership, appropriately tagging the resources we instantiate, and then helping to understand where a given business unit is driving some of their costs with some of the development work that they're doing. So each one of those areas is a journey. We're far from done across that landscape, but that's how we've been trying to work towards further maturity in the area.
First of all, we're very much in the same sort of environment that Blair just described, hybrid across legacy, going as far back as mainframe, other middlewares, all the way through to a growing cloud presence across a couple of the hyperscalers. As Canada Life approaches its cloud journey, not materially different than I think most folks here would be, which is assessing the workloads, building the factory for those migrations, but building the capabilities that help you get there and help you manage. Particularly, the three I look at maturing the most quickly. Number one, we've heard a couple of people mention, whether it's DevOps, or DevSecOps, everyone interprets the term in a way that's most favorable to whichever background they particularly come from. It's really important to grow the right mindset. Traditionally, pre-cloud, most of us used kind of a perimeter security approach, just essentially extending the walls and building the walls and bringing everything inside. As you move into the cloud, of course, you're often in more of a zero trust environment. Your people, your workloads are going to leave your walls. They need to be protected when they do so, and they need to be assessed for compromise when they come back in. So maturing that security mindset within development teams and operational teams is one of the really important drivers. A second for me for maturing is automation, but not in the way you think. We often use the fallacy that automation leads to being able to do more with less people. But really the goal for me around automation is actually being able to build in standardized templates, blueprints, quality controls into an automated process so that we're not wasting valuable brain power from dev teams and architecture teams that could be spent on more interpretive tasks. You can't waste a great dev team on things that could happen without them. Also, those measures and standardizations, that helps you bring the business along for the journey a little later. And then finally, I think someone touched on it as well on the cost aspect, is FinOps. As you move from kind of a model where you use rigidly controlled capital purchases and licensing purchases into more of a subscription-based consumption type model, that's very tough, particularly for organizations that are OpEx averse. So building and maturing that FinOps practice and arming it with real-time monitoring, alerting. In the end, predictive analytics is not just for operational system logs and workloads. It equally applies across the financial landscape.
For others who are not familiar with TDSP, we serve the City of Toronto kids, around 250,000 kids at 600 schools and around 42,000 staff members. Those are our internal stakeholders. Then roughly close to, I will say, 170,000 plus families are also connected to us. So whatever we put it out there has to be market ready on all fronts. I think a couple of things have been covered around the hybrid model, what we have. I think our shop is like what Blair and Charles have shared, similar things. And one of the key things around the DevOps has been, I found I have 4 areas doing development work, and then the operational side itself too, always arguing and quite a bit of finger pointing also part of that one. So I think smoothing out those processes and getting them right and having everyone on the same page is one of the key pieces also. So it's not like one team or 2 teams you need to deal with it. So it's 6, 7 teams, part of that complexity itself too, to make sure they're all in sync, they're all on page. Other piece has been a challenge for us is around the testing side. Again, some of the stakeholders who are external and you don't have any level of their digital fluency, you want to make sure whatever you put it out there is can be used by those individuals also, the way you see internal stakeholders leveraging. One of the key other pieces I see in the development area right now is a shortage of staff, or staff come and leave, they disappear very quickly. So having that consistency, having a strong bench has been a challenge for us here. And in public sector, altogether, we're finding it very hard to attract talent also. So, and we are not able to compete when it comes to salaries with the private sector itself too. So that has been also a big hit for us right out of the COVID so far. And that impacts whatever work we've been doing around mobile development, DevOps, also itself, because these are hot areas and private sector pays really well.
I think I have a different lens on this, right? Not being a CIO or a IT leader myself, and having the opportunity to work with several CIOs in my career and several leaders. And I think that every organization approaches this a little bit differently. But what I've seen most organizations do to assess maturity and see where they are in terms of their efficiency and development capabilities is really understanding the different tools, processes, and people that are involved in the SDLC and how they go to market as a whole. And then understanding how they can take a different lens on assessing the maturity of each individual tool and how it interacts with each other. And the most successful organizations that we're dealing with are finding ways to minimize the hop, skips, and jumps in between the different SDLC tools to increase velocity, while identifying the areas of things that scare them, like things that keep them up at night. I hate to use that term, but like, how do they manage governance? How do they manage security? How do they manage people and maintain the staff that they have and minimize the turnover? And what we've seen is the organizations that can find a way to measure that, either through industry standards such as DORA metrics or Trellis scores, which is, I think, individualized to certain organizations, are the ones that are the most successful in mitigating the risks associated with that evolution and moving to the, to that next stage of their maturity.